Right, so you're welcome back. This is a pause here on Join. Let's start from Parliament, where a heated debate erupted after the Environment Minister Dr. Ibrahim Murtala Mohammed attempted to lay the controversial legislative instrument LI 2462, which paved the way for mining in Ghana's forest reserves. Minority Leader Afenyo-Markin insisted the LI must undergo a pre-laying process before being officially introduced, a position echoed by the former Lands Minister Samuel Abujinapo, who called for further consultation. The first Deputy Speaker of Parliament, Bernard Anyafo, ruled that the LI cannot be laid until a mandatory 3-day pre-laying process is completed, directing the Subsidiary Legislative Committee to report to the House by Thursday. Speaker Alban Babin, however, cautioned that if the committee fails to submit its report by the deadline, he will allow the LI to be laid regardless. Parliamentary correspondent Kwaku Asante is live with us on the phone. Kwaku, so we'll have to allow the Subsidiary Legislative Committee to do some work on this before this LI will be laid.
Well, yes, the background and the context to this is that there is this controversial legislative instrument, LI 2462, that actually allows the president to grant the power or license to miners to mine in forest reserves. And it's been a big issue with organized labor and activists who have said that LI 2462 must not be laid. Must actually be revoked. The government, NDC government, I should say, had promised that they were going to revoke this LI if they won the 2024 election. And prior to this, last week, Ibrahim Murtala Mohammed on PM Express assured that that LI will be revoked. And so what he sought to do today was to put in place a new LI, which would have amended the existing LI 2462 and take the power from the president to actually proceed to license or grant license to persons to mine in forest reserves. First, listen to the Majority Leader Mahama Ayariga make the argument on the floor, insisting that this is something that they in the NDC had promised in the lead up to the 2024 election, and they insisted on abiding by that and lay this LI.
This is a one-clause instrument, just one clause, amendment to the regulations, which simply withdraws the powers of the president. So, Speaker, there is consensus across the country that this is a matter that should be done. We don't think that any stakeholder engagements will change anything. It is a commitment that this government made to Ghanaians, this president made to Ghanaians, that this power granted to presidents to allow mining in forest reserves, I don't want it. It should be taken away. And he has instructed his minister to come and lay the instrument that takes away the power. So, Speaker, there's nothing to discuss about this. A power granted, somebody says, I don't want to exercise the power. Take it away so that I'm not tempted to exercise it. Why do you want to tempt him? Why do you want to keep the law in place? Even by one day, why do you want to keep the law in place? So, Speaker, we are already here. And we are clearly not breaching any provision of the Constitution. As he said, it's a practice that we evolved so that when we are in a corner, we can wriggle our way out of it. But in this case, we are very confident about what we are doing. We are clear about the matter, that the president doesn't want the power. He wants it taken away. He doesn't want any money in forest reserves. He doesn't want the law to stay any additional day beyond where it is now. So, Mr. Speaker, let us lay it. If the committee meets and then the committee thinks that there should be a revision, they can come here. But I am assuring you that this side of the House is clear on the matter. I will not vote for any motion, any attempt to change anything in the regulations that are being laid. So, Mr. Speaker, let's lay it and then let's move on. We don't need any pre-laying ceremony in a matter that we are all clear on.
So that was then the position of the Majority Leader, Mahama Ayariga. The Minority Leader had a bite before the Speaker ruled on this matter. What position did he advance?
We must be clear that the Minority Leader is not opposed to revoking LI 2462 to take away the president's power to grant licenses in forest reserves. He actually says, in principle, he supports that. Only that there has been this principle and precedent in Parliament that airlines must go through pre-laying first. You will recall when Katie Hammond attempted to lay that controversial airline on cement price regulation.
Right.
The majority now, the minority at the time, did insist that there must be pre-laying, which they delay the laying of that instrument for some time. That is the position he took when he said that there must be pre-laying first with the subsidiary legislative committee doing some work before that airline stood before the House. Listen to him.
If the paper is laid, the instrument is laid, and there is any amendment there too, it can be effected, and it will require a certain number as provided for to even annul or amend or do any other thing to it. So on the basis of this provision, this House reached a consensus that allows what we call the pre-laying to enable the committee engage further on this matter, so that when the final instrument, together with the minister, is laid, I mean, that is, they fine-tune it and it's laid, at least we know that it's gone through all the processes. So I shall pray you to place the application on ice for now, and rather direct that the minister goes through what has become known as a pre-laying ritual, so that after that, the laying is done. Mr. Speaker, you can give them 14 days, 7 days, whatever, as it pleases the minister, to allow for that consultation to be done. That said, I am in principle in support of all steps that government intends to take to ensure that we preserve our forests and we deny some of those illegalities going on in our forests. Because I know that this issue of Galamsey, if not well addressed, it would lead this country to a place we don't want to go.
Well, the former Lands Minister Abu Jinapor and Environment Minister Murtala Mohammed clashed on this subject. Why?
Well, yes. While the Member of Parliament for Damongo and the former Lands Minister came in with an intervention that, as we speak, forest reserves have been taken over by NDC bigwigs and other persons who are still mining the forest reserves. He was sort of backing a position that had been taken by Minority Leader. But the Environment Minister came in insisting that the former Lands Minister cannot claim that there is currently mining going on in the forest reserves and the forest reserves have been hijacked, when he was the minister who actually signed on to the licensing that allowed persons to mine in the forest reserves.
Rise to support the position of the Minority Leader, the Speaker, on the need for some pre-laying procedure. And the Speaker, the point about this provision being a one-clause provision, Mr. Speaker, really, if you look at the national constitution and you look at the provision of the constitution which vests all mineral rights in the president, Mr. Speaker, and you look at other statutory interventions, Mr. Speaker, the previous government, I had the privilege of being minister. The previous government announced publicly, the Attorney General actually took steps in the course of the 8th Parliament to effect this same amendment. But Mr. Speaker, the point is, the need for this pre-laying is all because the submissions made by the Honorable Majority Leader and the Honorable Minister for Education, Mr. Speaker, in some respects, does not contextualize the issue, because the President has the right under the national constitution, under statute, to exercise a discretion for mining to take place in a forest reserve. Mr. Speaker, as we speak today, the 18th of March, Tuesday, Mining is happening almost in all the forest reserves of our country today.
By your direction, I think that my worry is the comments made by my brother, the former minister for lands, when he indicated that mining is actually going on in the forest area. It's true, but he issued those permits. He issued those permits, and what we are seeking to do, he issued them. He issued them, and what we are seeking to do is to ensure that people do not engage in side mining. And
all right, so Kwaku is still with me. So Kwaku, I mean, before we get to the first Deputy Speaker's ruling on the matter, let's establish some few things here. I understand the minority leader's argument early on was to the effect that if this, amendment is done, already some persons or some groups or companies have been given license to mine in the forest reserve, and the nation may have to pay judgment debt in response to that particular matter.
Well, yes, there is that bit of how will this revocation operate. For instance, will it have retrospective effect so that if persons have already been given permits to mine in the forest reserves, will that mean that their licenses are automatically revoked or not? The minority leader touched on that briefly. There is a certain consensus that the government would have to issue some set of guidelines in terms of how it would implement this. If it revokes LI 2462 or amends LI 2462 and prohibits mining in forest reserves and stop licensing companies or individuals to mine in forest reserves, what will that mean to persons who have already secured contracts and are currently mining in forest reserves by virtue of a legal instrument that were given to them appropriately by the state? There is that matter that have to be dealt with, and the minority leader in a submission in Parliament did touch on that, and they want some clarity and some guidance on that. But ultimately, the LI has not been laid as we speak because the first Deputy Speaker, Bernard Ahiafo, who was presiding over the House, sided with the minority and said that the pre-laying procedure is a time-honored principle in Parliament. Even when matters are not controversial, it is still important for it to go through that process. It is for this reason that he allowed the objection raised by the minority to stand for that LI 2462 amendment procedure to be subjected to pre-laying. But he gave a 3-day window, and he says if the Subsidiary Legislation Committee does not do this process by Thursday, he will allow the minister to lay that LI.
Honorable members, we all know the constitutionality of pre-laying, but for a good reason. The practice and the convention is that before the instrument is introduced, it is subjected to a pre-laying consideration, owing to the fact that by a lot of Supreme Court authorities, once the document is laid, you can dot I or cross T unless you have two-thirds majority in line with Article 11.7 to annul it. Honourable members, we know the agency involved in the ally before us, but with all due respect, I will want to direct and urge upon the Subsidiary Legislation Committee to, as a matter of urgency, conduct a pre-laying within 3 days and report to the House on Thursday. Honourable members, with all due respect, we established the practice to be conducting a pre-laying consideration. So, having regard to the agency involved, honourable members, let's give ourselves for some pre-laying consideration. Then the ally can be laid, and once it is laid, the report will come. If the report did not come after 21 sitting days, then it will mature as law, unless before maturity we have two-thirds majority to annul it. So, honourable members, I will plead that we subject the ally to an urgent pre-laying consideration.
All right, so that's the first Deputy Speaker of Parliament, Bernard Ahiafo. And this controversial matter is a matter of a national concern. And for that reason, let's subject it to some analysis here. And this afternoon, join me via Zoom, Mr. Kenasigbe. Kenasigbe is a lead voice when it's come to the issue of illegal mining and the need to put a stop to it. And also, Daribosu is also joining me on phone. First, let me start with you, Mr. Kenasigbe. Good afternoon and welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
So, I'm a little confused as I sit here, as a former parliamentary correspondent. I heard two things from the first Deputy Speaker. First was a directive to the Subsidiary Legislative Committee to act within 3 days. Otherwise, they'll go ahead and allow delaying to take place. And then I heard the same speaker say that the Subsidiary Legislation Committee has 21 days to report to the House. Otherwise, the amendment that government is seeking to do will take full effect. So as I said here, I don't even know exactly what the Subsidiary Legislative Committee is expected to do within 3 days or 21 days. I don't know whether it's the same confusion that you have.
No, so, well, if I understand the way Parliament works, what is going to happen is that the pre-laying would happen in 3 days.
Right.
So after the pre-laying is done, the bill will now be laid in Parliament. When it is laid in Parliament, it matures in 21 days. Mm-hmm. Between the day it is laid, the only way you can arrest this particular bill is to be able to get 2/3 majority to annul it. Mm-hmm. So the 21 days is when it is going to take to then become law in the states. But the 3 days is for the Subsidiary Legislation Committee to do their pre-laying, whatever amendments that they would want the Minister for Environment to be able to do. And from the conversation I've had with Attorney General and then with the Minister for Environment and Lands, it looks as if what they're basically seeking to do would just be, the clause, maybe a single clause or so, that takes out the president's power to be able to permit mining in the forest reserves. So I'm hoping, I think we'll have to live with the 3 days and let the pre-laying be done and whatever changes they want done to it, then come to Parliament. And then once it gets to Parliament, within the 21 sitting days, then it becomes law and the law then will be revoked. But for me, I am worried about a few things.
Right.
Because the NPP, when they were in power, the president told us that they had suspended, working on this particular bill. And the AG had worked together and there was supposed to be a bill going into Parliament to get the particular, repeal done. And so in that particular period, we're hoping that the Minerals Commission and the EPA were not going to be signing any permits. But I'm understanding that, and again, from what happened in Parliament, that the former Minister for Lands and Natural Resources was actually signing some of these permits, and then there were people, for people to get into the forest reserves. And in the EPA, there were other directors other than the CEO who were actually signing those permits. And one of the calls I would make to the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources and to the Minister for the Environment is to do a forensic audit on every permit that was actually signed and approved, between the 50 or so that were done after the elections and even all the way going back. Let's have a forensic audit and let's ensure that the processes that went to get all of this done were the proper processes. And if any of them does not follow the proper process, we use that to be able to revoke those licenses. If that is done and they didn't follow the processes, then the issues of even financial loss or judgment debt to the state would not occur.
Right.
And if there are anybody, whether be it ministers, be it directors of the EPA and the Minerals Commission who signed this thing without going through the right laws, they should be held responsible. How is it that the MPP, knowing that you had lost power, you now go and sign, and then you also know that the uproar that all of us as citizens have done.
But even that, Mr. even before government announced plans to have this law repealed, we saw a presidential directive that said that no more signing of permits to mine in a forest reserve. And now you have the man who was in charge of that sector say that people are mining today even as we speak.
Exactly. So again, that's why it will be very interesting. based on that directive that came from the presidency about no more permits, it will be interesting to have the Minister for Land and the Minister for Environment have a forensic audit to say, after that particular directive, were any other permits done? Were they backdated? Who were the people who did them? And so that we can hold those people accountable. And then on the basis of the fact that the president himself had directed that no permits should be signed, all of those permits, if they were signed, should be annulled and should be revoked. And we should make sure that those who had done those signing, we should hold them accountable. And I'm happy that currently the current Minister for Environment has issued an instruction to the EPA to say that for any of these permits, the only person who can sign them should be the CEO.
Right.
Because, that with the gravity of the situation that we're dealing with, you would want to make sure that it is only the head of the institution who is actually signing this, and no other directors are just getting into the business of signing it, to make sure that the things that we are seeing on our TV screen, we would have these damage being done to our resources as a country.
Let me bring in Dr. Bosu. I mean, Mr. Bosu, disappointed that the laying did not happen today. Do you think that the agency that everybody appears to be pushing this thing to go to was missing in Parliament today? I mean, what exactly will 3 days do to something that is causing so much destruction to our forest cover?
Yes, thank you very much. So I am starting to ask a lot of questions myself now, and I'm worrying. Because if I understand the process that is going on in Parliament and what the Honorable Minister for Environment is seeking to do, I get the impression that it's going to be an amendment. And even that, I think that we need to interrogate what kind of amendment is going to be. Is it an entire revocation of the LI, or it is going to be an amendment? If you recall, we indicated that it was not only just a clause within the LI that was problematic, but several other sections of the LI was not consistent with current practice and also with current objectives to secure our forests. Now, let's come back to what the former Minister of Land will say in terms of what I must say I'm very, very disappointed in what the former Minister of Lands and Natural Resources was saying. If there is anybody we want to put the blame of the kind of wanton destruction and impunity that has been unleashed on our forests, I'll put the blame on himself. He is actually responsible for the mess we find every day. So I think that he has no moral right to sit in Parliament and complaining about the mess that is going on. It's all because of him and the absence of due diligence on his part and after his leadership, how to watch for these things to happen. He sat down for the LIC forces to the department. Now, let's also discuss the point about we be very careful about invoking these airlines.
Right.
There's likely to be certain judgment.
Yeah, because according to the minority side, some persons have already been granted permit to mine. There's some kind of legal commitment between the state and these entities, and so revoking it may land us in a court where the country may be saddled with judgment debt.
Well, I think let's interrogate that. From the presentation recently made by the Minister of Land, they said that there are about 25 additional mining leases that was granted for mining in production for example. And out of those 5 production and mining leases, only 10 companies have been given mining permits. That means that once you are given a mining concession to the Minerals Commission, you now have to secure a mining permit from the Forest Commission. Out of 25 granted leases, only 10 have secured mining permits from the Forest Commission.
Right.
So yes, we need to deal with the 10 that currently have mining permits. But also, let's forget, the same time somewhere last year, the first did a report on the circumstances that led to government issuing permits for certain persons within government and certain persons related to relatives and colonies among the government or at the time.
Right.
So I completely agree with what NSB is saying, that we need to do an audit, scrutinize the processes through which people manage to get these concessions and revoke them appropriately. We can't just allow people, because of their relations to people in power and the corridors of power, they can secure certain permits and get away with it. I think there was a problem with the issuing of those licenses, and we need to go back to them, scrutinize them, and revoke all of them as needed. But for me, I think that the government needs to see that, look, the minority currently would put in impediments and their way to getting this LI repealed. I hear them saying that, yes, they are committed to support it, but their body language also show that they really want to see this. So I want to see the government make sure that they go through the due diligence, prepare themselves adequately before they go before Parliament again. Now, there's another question I said we go into it. Is it an amendment or is it a I'm very interested in whichever response this is going to be, because we need to be sure what exactly we are saying. If we are not careful, the government is going to say, I'm going for an amendment, but what are they really amending? And how is that going to address the mischief that we are currently confronted with people getting licenses to mine in our forests? How is that mischief going to be addressed? And that is what I still am here to get the clarity.
And of course, all of us are waiting for that clarification. Because the document was not laid and the content is not available, it's unclear what exactly the government is seeking to do. Even though we've heard the majority leader say, Mahama Yariga, that this is just to take a portion from the LI, a sentence. So it's unclear whether it is amending or revoking. And you made a point that it is not just about people having access to the forest, but there are other issues with the LI that needs to have serious attention given to.
Exactly. And so if we're only going there with an amendment to just take out the clause where the president must grant the powers for somebody to have access to the forest, that is not the mischief we are seeking to cure.
Okay.
That is definitely a problem, but that is not the major mischief we are seeking to cure. That entire LI 2462 must be revoked. Anything else will just be joking.
Let me bring in Mr. Ken Ashigbe again on this matter. I asked earlier about the agency that all of us wants to see, especially in the fight against illegal mining. And this LI is one key component of it. Now, before the attempted laying today, we've heard politicians make all manner of commitments to it. Now, on the floor today, and then listening to MPs and impediments that were put in the way of the minister to have this laid, it begs the question whether commitment is really there. And of course, the concerns that have also been raised about possible payment of judgment debts if the revocation is done. What vibe are you getting, and how do we go around this particular matter, Mr. Ashigbe?
Well, thank you very much. So I think Darrell raises a very interesting point about what is it that we seek to do with the LI that we are seeking to deal with. And it is important that we know, whether it's going to be a revocation of the LI completely or it is only just a small amendment, and what about the other mischief that is within the law. So that is important. And I think that if, it would be great for government to share a copy of this document that they are going to lay, so that in the pre-laying stage, all of us, would then have an opportunity to make an input into it. Because so far as we are concerned, that law we thought was going to go completely. But if it is just one clause that is going to, then a lot of the other issues that are, a lot of the other mischief that we are within it, would still remain. But on the issue of the body language of our politicians,
right.
They just seem to surprise us at every point of the way, of whether their commitment itself to the country, so far as the damage that this is doing to us, whether they actually are showing it. You see some of the people like the former Minister for Lands, and you are somebody who after. All of this, the elections were done when your president had said that we're suspending this particular line. You still are going about issuing permits. And then what is it that you're saying? When the MPs by now should be thinking about how do we save our environment? How do we ensure that, judgment debts are not incurred? But you don't see them bringing that out. They only seem to be pointing that out as a means of stalling the process. And as Ghanaians, we need to let the political class know that sovereignty resides with us, the people. And we are not going to allow this ecocide and this genocide to continue. So it is important that if really they've agreed that they're going to do pre-laying, then we need to let the NDC know that we are not interested in just one clause amendment, because there are other elements of this obnoxious law that actually should go, so that even if the whole law is not going to go, then the things that have to go are more than just that part that says the president, can give permission for mining in, globally significant biodiversity areas. There are various elements that, also have to be dealt with.
This pre-laying, obviously, as a former parliamentary correspondent, is to allow MPs to share their thoughts on the intent of government and possibly fine-tune it before it is laid on the floor, because of the interest that is involved in this particular matter. Would you, for example, suggest that perhaps the window could be open so that people who have stories to share, people who have suggestions to make, can be part of this 3-day window that has been open to fine-tune the document?
I completely agree. And for me, I think that what should be done is that the document should be made public to all of us. And, because this is something that we all have looked at, we can immediately show that all the elements in that particular law, which is bad, we need to be sure that all of that have been captured in whatever, that new document seems to be carrying, so that we make sure that all of that is cured. Because if they don't do a good job about it, we definitely, as a people, are not going to accept it. So it is important that the people who are the sovereign, who these 275 people represent, they need to realize the fact that their sovereignty comes from us.
Right.
And in this particular issue that is of concern to all of us as citizens, we also need to be given a voice. If they are going to do pre-laying, then they need to give us a voice to be able to ensure that our voices are heard.
Let me go to Darrell and come back to wrap up with you, Mr. Kanaju. So, Darrell, you took this matter to court. Where are we on this, on the court issue?
Yes, I think the court, the case is still ongoing. The AG indicated that they were still on course to repeal the LI. So I'm really surprised that we are even now talking about some amendments going on. So, the case is still going to remain in court until we see that the right thing is done. But I think that, look, this issue needs to be treated very seriously, and I'm surprised that none of us have had the opportunity to review whatever is going to Parliament. And the thing is that once it gets to Parliament, they go to the pre-laying process. It's going to, we will not get opportunity to even send a memo to them. So I believe, and I concur with what Senator is saying, that look, let's have an opportunity to really interrogate what changes or amendments the Honourable Minister is sending to Parliament. Then we cannot rally behind the process than for it to get to Parliament and we'll be sending memos left and right to set us for the process. I think that once we treat this issue as seriously as we say it is, then we need to prepare adequately before we go before the lawmakers.
I agree.
I don't think we are preparing ourselves enough and being ready before we get there. So let's deal with what needs to be done and make sure once we get there, there are no issues coming, doing a lot of back and forth and delaying the process any further. I am really, for me, right now worried as to really what is that amendment they want to make. And that, for me, I think that it needs to be open up for us to make input.
And thank you very much, Darrell. Of course, we will all be asking the question to have access to this document that government is seeking in Parliament. Darrell, also thank you so much. Mr. Kanaju, finally, before I let you go, what is the state of affairs today as we speak? Yesterday, the Lands and Natural Resources Minister inaugurated another group to protect our water body. Same thing that was done last year with the Commission of the River Gas. What is the state of affairs as we speak today as far as illegal mining is concerned?
Again, so as you mentioned yourself, in 2022, we saw this water guards thing being done. Last year it was done, and this year it's just been rebranded and called Blue. And then there's a lot more of them going to be done. But you have a situation where you have part of the landmass of Ghana currently under the control of militias who are protecting these illegal miners. Government has sought to be able to take out about 3 or 4 of them. But, so the issue about the state of emergency in these forest reserves, on these water bodies, are still a critical thing that has to be done. Because unfortunately, you have the criminals within it. All that has done now is happened is that the NDC ones are saying their party is in power. And they are collaborating with the NPP ones. So it's just a share of it that has changed. And because we also currently have a minister that seems to be bent on dealing with the situation, not allowing their political powers, there is an intensity in terms of the way they are mining it. So you have the destruction going on, the waters being destroyed, the environment being destroyed. You also have the national security challenge that have come, where some of these people, in the situation of Ohemintewia, and then Akwesi in City TV.
Right.
The police, in the presence of the police, these people were still able to brutalize these journalists, be able to destroy their equipment. The police could not save them because the police were outgunned and outnumbered in that particular situation. So you have also this national security challenge that you have on your mind. And another challenge that is also happening, the whole issue of the opioids, the rats, the devastating impact on the youth in all of these communities. And you know that the famous thing about the 7,000 football fields that have been destroyed.
Exactly.
For every hectare of land that have been destroyed like that, it will cost us $40,000 to be able to restore. We are hearing the EPA saying that they will need about $300 million to be able to restore our water bodies.
Right.
All of that is going to come from you and I. So it is important that His Excellency the President considers the declaration of the state of emergency over our water bodies to be able to deal with the challenges that are confronting us.
Today at the stakeholders meeting organized by the Constitutional Review Committee, Professor Kwame Jan, who was asked to speak on natural resources, made a suggestion that perhaps we should have a standby permanent military presence in all our forest reserves so that they will kind of protect it. Is it a suggestion that you welcome?
Well, I think that beyond the issue of a standby force as well, is how do we also use a lot of technology? So how do we use, because it should not only be a ground force. You would want to be able to also use the Air Force as well. And in some of the places, you want to use the Navy. So there should be a rapid response that we're doing. And then we should also be able to use a lot of drone technology. I am of the view that we've gotten to the point where you remember the South African example,
right,
where the South Africans refused when those illegal miners were in the pit and they cut supply of food and water to them. The main reason was that most of the people involved in that were foreigners. And these security, the militias that have taken portion of our land are also foreigners. So I believe that we've gotten to the point where a bit of some lethal power would have to be used. I am not going to be one of those who are saying shoot to kill, but I think that we should have the situation where our Air Force should be able to fire, pellets that would be able to penetrate clothing of people, and that pellet should be able to have some indelible ink that when it sprays on your body and it penetrates non-lethal, it would leave the ink there, and it would also itch, so that these people would be exposed as criminals who are involved in it. When they go to the hospitals to get treatment, then they can also be arrested. I think we've gotten to that particular point where we need to be using some non-lethal power against those people who we find in these underwater bodies, in this forest reserves. And you can only do that when you combine and use technology. The need of technology in this fight, combined with the power of the military and all of that, is really going to be important to be able to have a permanent solution such that these forest reserves, these water bodies becomes no-go, so that then there's your 2,000 water guards, then they can be monitoring it. But before you do that, you need to drive out these armed people who are in this forest, who are causing a lot of havoc and damage to us as a country.
We'll leave it here. Thank you very much, Mr. Ken Ashigbe. The AS, Dr. Ken Ashigbe, actually, is with the Media Coalition Against Illegal Mining. The news this afternoon is that government was unsuccessful in laying an a paper to repeal LI 2462 because members raised issues about the fact that the LI had to go through a pre-laying procedure for the next 3 days so that the House or members can have an opportunity to speak to the contents of what government is seeking to do with this particular LI. So the Speaker has directed that the Subsidiary Legislative Committee have until Thursday to do something about it in terms of pre-laying before it will be laid. When it's laid, it will be given 21 days to mature before whatever government is seeking to do will become effective. This is a pause here on Joy News. Now let's move away from illegal mining to a matter that in a way has a relationship. The National Commission on Small Arms and Light Weapons is declaring war on illegal firearms, deploying weapons detectors to Bawku and other conflict zones to disarm criminals and to help reduce arms proliferation. This comes in the wake of the brutal killing of a military officer in Bawku, a flashpoint of rising violence. Acting Executive Secretary of the Commission, Dr. Adams Bona, says stripping criminals of their weapons is key to curbing bloodshed and restoring order. He was speaking at a staff retreat for the Commission in the Ashanti regional capital, Kumasi.
We are the only organization in the country that has a weapons detection system, scanner. This system detects only weapons. So you can actually bury a weapon in the soil, deep down the soil, and it will pick it. It won't pick anything, just a weapon. We are the only organization that has this particular equipment. And if you have heard my minister speak in some of his, statements, he has promised, and the president has promised, that they are going to be equipping us with more of these weapon detection systems. They are very expensive, but we have one that was donated to us by the German government. And so one of the things we are doing is to operationalize our activities. And so it shouldn't take too long. You are going to see us on your streets. You are going to see us in your backyard with our weapon detection system, scanning areas or scanning vehicles to be able to pick up weapons that are hidden in vehicles. The usual scanner, metal scanner, cannot detect a weapon, but this only detects a weapon. And so if you had a weapon here, in this building, in this hotel, wherever this weapon is, the system is able to detect it. And we are the only organization in the country that has it. Through the German government, we have it.
Well, it's good time to take you now to Bawku for updates on a brutal killing of a military officer in the area. Upper East regional correspondent Albert joins me on the line. So, Albert, good afternoon and welcome to the Pulse.
Good afternoon, Elton.
So, as we speak today, what is the current state of affairs in Bawku?
Today, things have been normal. We haven't heard of any disturbances today. Last night, though, we heard of some sporadic shootings, which have become almost a daily occurrence in that town. This morning, also, we heard that some 2 people were killed in the neighboring Binduri area. It's been difficult to get more information about that. But, this particular one is suspected to be related to the conflict. But going back to the killing of the soldier yesterday,
yes.
What we know at the moment is that he was not dressed in military uniform. Some have said that he was in mufti. Others have said that he was in this vest-like shirt, which usually has army written on it, that jersey-like shirt. And he was on foot when he was shot at. So the information we have based on our checks with some of our sources in Bawku is that he may have been mistaken to be belonging to one of the factions, and that's why he may have been shot. But there are also some people who believe that if you go back to about a month ago, there was an incident where a woman was killed in her home together with her 2 daughters, and the people in that neighborhood, said that the person who carried out that act was in a military uniform. Till date, they actually called for investigations into that incident. We haven't heard anything about that. But since that incident, the calls from some of the civilians in Bawku have intensified, with some of them even bold enough to say that the military, rather than keeping the peace in the area, have resorted to bullying and sometimes brutalizing innocent civilians, and in some instances, even killing some of them. And so the relationship between some of the people in Bawku and the military hasn't been the best in recent times. And so there are those who also feel that this could be linked to that. But we haven't heard anything officially from the Ghana Armed Forces itself as far as this incident is concerned.
So until this incident yesterday, you would say that Bawku had been calm, especially after the president made that passionate appeal to them on March 6th during the Independence Day celebration.
Well, not exactly, because there have been a lot of issues from the month of January till now. There have been several incidents. There was an incident where an armed military vehicle that was escorting a bus was fired at in one of the suburbs in Bawku. There was also, as I said, the incident where the woman and her two daughters were murdered. Several other incidents involving, the residents, some killings in the night, shootings in the atmosphere, even during curfew hours.
Okay.
There have also been at least two incidents where a military vehicle was involved in an accident. And so for many people, you cannot exactly say that Bawku has been calm, especially from the beginning of this year up to now, because almost every week, or at least there is one major incident recorded in every month since the year began. We can also talk about the incidents that are happening on the highway between Bolga, Wali heading towards Tamale, where buses have been ambushed and shot at and bent and all of that. So the situation hasn't been exactly calm at all.
All right, we'll leave it here for now. Albert, thank you so much for this update from Bawku. And of course, the Asante Hene Otumfuo II has reaffirmed his commitment to resolving the long-standing conflict in Bawku, stating that discussions with key stakeholders are ongoing to bring lasting peace to the area. He made this known when the Ashanti Regional Minister, Dr. Frank Ambakohene, along with other members of parliament, paid a courtesy call on him at the Menchia Palace in the Ashanti region. And this was yesterday. Now, addressing the issue, the Asante noted that whilst gun violence in Bawku has reduced, efforts are still underway to find a sustainable resolution to the crisis. And this is his quote. He says, "We are still on the Bawku issue. Now, gun violence is on the low. I have invited the leaders of the parties involved, Bawku, Naba, and the Nairi. I've also spoken with the Mosi and Hausa ethnic groups. The Nairi was not feeling well, but I'm waiting for a representative from his palace to come and see me on Tuesday, that is today. Then we can all have a conversation about the conflict." He stated the Asante further appeal to all factions involved to lay down their arms, emphasizing the need for dialogue and a collective effort to address the deep-rooted historical challenge fueling the conflict. And he ended by saying that I want to appeal to everyone in Bawku to lay down their weapons. I told them, all the stakeholders, to inform their people to lay down their tools. We are discussing and addressing this particular issue. And he is confident that the leaders will meet with him. Today is Tuesday, it's almost 4 p.m. Hopefully that meeting is underway, and we have our ears at the Menchia Palace to bring you the very latest on the Otumfuo's attempt to resolve the Bawku conflict. This is the pulse here on Journey. Let's take a short break. When we return, we'll talk about schools under trees in some parts of the country. We're back here on the pulse here on Joy News. Now let's turn our attention to education as part of our series on how to make things better, especially in our schools. Now at Sachibo DA Primary School, learning is a fight against the odds. People do not just lie on the floor to write, they share overcrowded classrooms where multiple grade levels are taught together due to a dire shortage of teachers. With only 2 teachers handling the entire school, lessons are merged, making quality education nearly impossible. Hunger deepens the crisis as people go through the day on empty stomach with no access to the school feeding program. Emmanuel Jivenu has more in our latest episodes of education series, Crumbling Starts.
If you're happy and you know, clap your hands.
Education, often hailed as the foundation of the future, is falling apart in this farming community. At Sechilbo DA Biggs School, the earlier stages of learning have become a struggle no child should endure.
We are 3 professional teachers in the school year. With that number, we divided the classes, the grades into 3, because we want each level should also have something. So one of the problems is the classes are not even enough. So we have 3 class rooms, and we have to use those classrooms. So we have divided them into 3, KG 1, 2, and basic 1 in one class, P2, P3 in another class, P4, P5, and 6. We are handling them. We are not finding things easy. It's very difficult for us, but we are managing.
Be you okay, man?
Multi-grade teaching is not a choice here. It is a necessity, one that compromises the quality of education and the future of these children.
Frankly speaking, we have not been fair. We have never been fair to these young children. The children are suffering. How can a child sit on the floor to write? Some, even we have to buy mats for them to be able to sit so that they will be a little bit clean.
The recent delivery of textbooks to Sachilbo DA Basic School offers little solace when the lack of desk leaves these books vulnerable to wear and tear.
With the textbooks, if you don't have any a sitting place, with the textbook, these children, they are young. They are not like grown up like us. We can hold and write. They are small. We are teaching them. But with the textbook, how would they write? So at least they should come to our aid.
The school feeding program is a lifeline for education, providing meals that boost enrollment, keep children in school, and help them focus on learning. Unfortunately, pupils at Sachilbo DA Basic School go through their day on empty stomachs with hunger, competing against education and causing enrollment to decline.
The school feeding, which will have also helped to increase the enrollment, I in my head, we applied. Still, we have not heard any information about it. We're also planning to even mobilize ourselves to see if the community can help. Then we'll do some gardening for the school. When we harvest, then we'll be using it to do porridge for the children in the morning. That will also help them to come. Okay, you are welcome. Thank you, sir. Oh, we need teachers.
I'm a native of this community, but recently I completed my education in Iba. From there, after that I completed my education, I said, no, let me come back to my first station or my old school to help my junior brothers so that they can also be well educated from me.
Joshua's story is one of hope and sacrifice, but even his addition cannot fill the gap left by a shortage of professional teachers.
On the average, most of our primary schools have less than 4 teachers. On the average, most of them have 2 teachers, 3 teachers. The school that we could say is very lucky will be in Tatale Township here, maybe about 5 teachers, the primary school. So that's how bad the staffing situation is.
And I doubt how a class 1 child can learn class 3 subjects, and they all learn the same thing. So it means the lower ones are being polluted because they can not even pronounce 2-letter words. How can they be writing the sentence to read the whole sentence?
Claire, please pay attention.
For these children, the future seems uncertain. Poor infrastructure and inadequate staff have created a crisis that demands urgent intervention.
The children themselves are quite cooperative, but for some time now we are also trying to also involve much attention from the parents so that they will help together with us to bring the children to board. Though they are all doing well and then they are cooperating, but the academic aspect is also low at the moment. That's for my experience. I've seen that they need a lot. And when I came, I also tried to find out why it is this way. I got to realize that there were insufficient infrastructural activities that will support the children to pick up the knowledge they needed.
These children represent the promise of tomorrow, but without desks to sit on, classroom to learn in, or food to sustain them, how can they carry the weight of a nation's future? It is time to act. It is time to make fairness a reality for every child in Ghana. Emmanuel Jivenu, Joy News, Sachilbo, Northern Region.
Well, we'll ask some questions pretty soon, but relating to this is the Asantino 2432 the second. He's called for reforms in Ghana's free senior high school program, advising government to allow parents who can afford payment of their wards education to do so, admitting the positive impacts of the policy. The Asantino observed various challenges, including poor feeding, continue to plague the program, defeating the purpose of providing quality education. Take a listen.
The E-blocks have stalled. Funding education is a challenge, but some sectors that aren't critical could have their funds reduced to be rechanneled to the education sector to improve education. Some dormitories in the schools are still not occupied. Some schools do not have science and IT labs. Even the PTA fees are no longer available. Government should look at these challenges and address them.
School bus, free senior high school and passing a year.
We are indeed rolling out the free SHS, but if we brainstorm and realize students will have to go to school and be asked to return home because there is no food, then it is of no use. Let us take a critical look at it. If some parents can pay, we should allow them. In the past, if you pass your exam, we check up with the BEZA to assist the brilliant but needy students. That's where we had the COCO scholarships.
COCO scholarship, those days, they are moving. BEZA no who say we need to near the school administration. BEZA near the man on so. It is a bread and more can and never walk. Then when I'm the brofon out to him.
And as Ghana joins the rest of the world in celebrating World Mathematics Day, stakeholders in the education sector are emphasizing the need to strengthen STEM education at the preschool level. This year's celebration themed Mathematics, Art and Creativity, highlighting the crucial role of mathematics in fostering innovation and problem-solving skills from an early age. Eric Asante has more in this report.
This year's World Mathematics Day celebration was held under the theme Mathematics, Arts and Creativity. The event in the Central Region brought together students from all levels to showcase their skills in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Speaking at the event in Cape Coast, the Director of STEM Education at the Ghana Education Service, Mrs. Olivia Sewa Opare, emphasized the importance of enhancing STEM education at the preschool level.
STEM education is no other subject than doing. And our foundational learning, that is preschool, is the place that we need to pay much attention to, because that is the foundation for knowledge and skills so far as STEM education is concerned. Over there, we do a lot of integrated approach of learning, where we use scientific concepts to come out with confirmations. Now, look at this TLM, this beautiful TLM, where we have mimicked our two fingers. And there is creativity, which is one of our core competencies when we teach science, when we teach mathematics.
The Central Regional Director of Education, Emmanuel Suman, highlighted the importance of innovative teaching practice to make mathematics more easy.
In today's world, that is the 21st century, whatever you do, you can't do it without STEM. So if we catch them or we let them develop interest in mathematics at that level, I think when they grow, become part of them. And what we are trying to do is, the curriculum has been developed in such a way that teachers will use simple pedagogy to teach that subject so that pupils will have more interest in that subject.
According to Madam Grace Esuman, the STEM coordinator for KEA, the newly introduced curriculum at the basic level incorporates interactive methods to make learning fun and engaging.
Now, GES has introduced a practical learning, and the practical learning starts from preschool to our KG, from KG to primary, then we move to JHS up to the SHS, then beyond. Now, with this practical lesson, we realize that at the ancient days, a lot of women are afraid of mathematics, and it goes up to the tertiary level, and women cannot venture into the mathematical field or STEM field. But now we have made it very practical. That is why we have showcased all these years.
Some of the preschool teachers spoke to Joy News.
Learning has become more fun and interactive because the children learn through play. And through that, as they are learning, they are able to better understand the world around them and whatever they are doing. They grasp concepts very fast. So we have this math center, as we see here, also in the classroom with other centers where learners are able to go and interact with the materials and learn through play. So that has become the way of learning in the kindergarten now.
Now, to some other stories now, and despite efforts to promote gender inclusion, women remain unrepresented in Ghana's security sector. The Ghana National Action Plan 1 failed to bridge the gap, with women making up less than 10% of the armed forces. Advocates say this must change. There's more in this report.
GANEP 1 aimed to increase female participation in security, but poor implementation left a significant gender gap. Today, women make up less than 10% of the Ghana Armed Forces. Advocates say including more women in security roles is key to effective conflict resolution. Theodora Williams-Anti is the Executive Director of the Foundation for Security and Development in Africa.
We saw that we had a national plan, which we call GANEP 1, for the implementation of women, peace and security. That plan was not implemented, and that resulted in very low participation of women in the security sector. Before this particular action plan, we had less than 10% of women in the Ghana Armed Forces. Currently, in the Ghana Armed Forces, we have only about 18.6% of women in the Ghana Armed Forces. And we are saying that if we focus more on women being part of these peace-building processes, we are likely to have less conflicts in Ghana. We are likely to have the Bawku issue resolved. Today, we are looking at it and seeing that we have done about 60%.
Betta from Canada agrees. She says more women in security means better representation in decision-making.
Canada firmly believes that full participation of women in peace and security is not only a matter of justice, but also one of effectiveness. The evidence is clear. When women are involved, peace processes are more sustainable, security is enhanced, and the benefits are felt, and we reaffirm our commitment to working together to make these objectives a reality.
Head of Gender at the Ghana Immigration Service, Evelyn Dankwa, revealed that the underrepresentation of women is more glaring in senior command positions.
Female officers remain underrepresented in senior command positions. The challenges in the male-dominated sector is very serious, and we would have to deliberately include women in our decision-making levels.
As calls for gender inclusion grow, stakeholders insist that real change requires strong policies and leadership commitment. Jennifer August's report read to you.
Well, let me take you to Parliament now, where the members of Parliament are commenting on the budget statement presented to the House last week.
For continuing some of these interventions, Mr. Speaker, I want to appeal to our friends on that side that look, I understand that you are in opposition, and it is your job to offer criticisms. But you see, don't just be finding criticisms where there is none. Support a worthy cause. Support President John Dramani Mahama. Support Dr. Atufo-Sen. Support us to implement this sensible budget, because this is what is going to take us out of the mess that you left us. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Well, you were also left with 3 minutes. I will now grant permission to Honorable Kojo Opong Nkrumah. I have seen some asterisks here. I'm sure they were suspecting you won't be around, so they put one Honorable Koko Asante. In case you are not
Mr.
around.
Speaker, let me clarify. In fact, Mr. Speaker, to clarify that after Honorable Kojo Opong Nkrumah on our side, it will now be Honorable Koko. So we indicated with the arrow as she was number 10, so that after Honorable Opong Nkrumah, then Honorable Koko will now come. Thank you.
So, Honorable Member, you may give your submissions now.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for the opportunity to make some comments on the statement before this House. It's unfortunate that the Deputy Minister for Finance has just left the chamber. We are debating the budget of the executive. The Minister for Finance is not here. His deputy was here. Right after his submissions, he's Nicodemously sneaked out of the chamber. We would have wished that he would be here to get feedback. And here is why. You know, sometimes when you are in government, you suffer from a certain disease. Any feedback that is given you, you think your job is just to defend. I was information minister. You think your job is just to defend and explain. Sometimes if you listen, you will get free advice that can help you to improve what you are doing. So it will be good that you bring him back into the chamber so that he can listen to the feedback that we are giving to him. He, for example, says that his justification for raising this 49 billion, this phantom 49 billion, is that in 2017 we mentioned arrears of 7 billion. What he forgets is that when we mentioned 7 billion, we did not proceed to adjust the fiscals with that 7 billion. We did not proceed to adjust the national account with that 7 billion and change the primary balance. We proceeded to say it will be audited, and thankfully, a good chunk of those claims were thrown away. What he has done differently, what he and his boss have done differently, is that they have proceeded to adjust the national accounts and adjust the primary balance for numbers that they themselves claim they have not audited. I'm happy he's coming back into the chamber. So the difference is that you have proceeded to adjust the national accounts with figures that you are confessing you have not audited. Who does that? And that is why we are telling you to hasten slowly. Mr. Speaker, he says they have indexed LEAP to inflation. He goes on to say that they have provided dedicated funding for free SHS. Honorable Deputy Minister, you did not index LEAP to inflation. The MPP government that just did indexed LEAP to inflation. You did not do it. You did not do it. Don't take credit for what you haven't done. Also, you claim there was no dedicated funding for free SHS, and you question whether the erudite Abeno Osei-Asare has read the budget. I regret to inform you, you probably haven't read your own budget. You haven't read your own budget. Because if you have read your budget, you will find out that the dedicated funding for free SHS was a goods and services allocation of ABFA. Yeah. Honorable Deputy Minister, ABFA, what you have done, and again, you tell the people of Ghana that you have uncapped NHIL and GET Fund. That's not true. Let me show you why it's not true. It is the Earmarked Funds Capping and Realignment Act. What that law says is that you cap 14 funds. And if you find that any fund requires its full allocation, you restore. That's what you have done. If you wanted to uncap, you know what you do? You
So we'll take it back to Parliament. We have stable connection to the chamber. The members are commenting on the budget statement presented to the House by the Finance Minister, Dr. Kesal Ato-Forson. The members are commenting, and then you heard the Member of Parliament for Ofuasia Yerebi Kwejo Oponkroma. We can link back to Parliament now.
The 14 funds will be nothing to write home about. You told us between pages 3 and 20. You told us between pages 3 and 22 of your manifesto that your economic program, Honorable Deputy Minister, let me have your attention. You told us that your economic program will be built on 3 foundational pillars: the economic transformation agenda, the economic recovery program, and the 24-hour economy. Right at the dispatch box, your boss, the Finance Minister, has admitted that the 24-hour economy part of it, they are not ready to even lay it before this House. Sunday, you brought in Mr. Guzitando to do an informal presentation, and he himself admitted that he has some further work to do, and then he will bring it here. You have brought us an economic policy. The economic recovery program, that's the foundation. The economic transformation agenda, that's the foundation. The 24-hour economy, that's the foundation. You have not finished preparing it. Who built the first floor when they haven't built the foundation? Which contractor built the first floor when they haven't built the foundation? And let me show you the effect. That is why when we go into your economic policy, there's no coherence with your manifesto. You made 273 economic promises in your manifesto, 273 of them. If we prorate your 4-year period, each year you should be doing about 68 of them. Do you know how many of your economic promises you have responded to in this first economic policy? Do you know the number? I'm not sure you have read the budget. You haven't counted. You have only responded to 25 of your economic promises. Mr. Deputy Minister, that is just about 36%. If you continue at this rate, by the time this year is over and by the time your tenure is over, you will be doing less than 20%. And let me tell you why. Because even when you roll out programs as government, not all of it succeeds. I've told you that we've been in government before. The MPP in the first year rolled out 3 SHS, 1D, 1F, 1 village, 1 dam. Even those ones that we started early, look at the challenges that we faced. And so, Honorable Deputy Minister, we are drawing your attention. This is free feedback to you, that you need to find more coherence between your economic policy and your own manifesto. Else, by the time your tenure is done, you would have disappointed yourself. The second point I want to draw your attention to is that your budget, even the one that you brought, your budget, it betrays your priorities. You see, like they say, don't tell me what your priorities are. Show me your budget, and I will see what you value. This budget that you have brought is the budget in which you have told us, first of all, that you value Ghanaian women so much that you are going to set up a bank for them, the Women's Development Bank. You have put $51 million allocation, 51 million cedis, 51 million cedis allocation in this budget for the Women's Development Bank. And then you have put 70 million cedis for research at Jubilee House. You see your priorities? The budget is beginning to betray your priorities. You give all of the women in Ghana who are looking for this bank 51 million, and then you give research at the office of the president 70 million Ghana cedis. You are beginning to see your priorities. Honorable Deputy Minister, you told us that something has happened that's never happened. The president has gone to negotiate minimum wage. How much? 10%. By the way, the previous administration did way better, 25% plus. But while you are increasing minimum wage by 10%, you have increased the compensation budget at the Office of Government Machinery by over 720%. Over 720%. This is what the leader of the minority said, that very soon we will see the true colors of the umbrella. You see, your priorities are beginning to show. You need not less than about 1 billion Ghana cedis to close the infrastructure gap within senior high schools. You say you don't have fiscal space, you don't have money for it, but you have found 4.1 billion cedis to buy gold. gold that was being bought from liquidity that was being brought into the jurisdiction by foreign companies that wanted to buy the gold. Now you want to take taxpayers' money, 4 billion Ghana cedis, to go and buy gold. Are you seeing your priorities now? You have made available 100 million Ghana cedis for capital expenditure at the Office of Government Machinery. What are you buying there? More cars or what? 100 million Ghana cedis for capital expenditure. And yet you say to the young people of this country that there is no space. Paragraph 478. That's why I'm worrying whether you've read it. Paragraph 478. You say there's no fiscal space to recruit young people into the public service. But you find 100 million Ghana cedis for capital expenditure, to buy cars and other things. Are you seeing where your priorities are? If I take you into a further analysis of your own numbers, Honorable Deputy Minister, your own numbers. Like my brother John Jinapo used to say, Mr. Speaker, we have run the regression analysis and the correlation analysis on this side, and we know all the figures. I'm happy he's here in the chamber. Mr. Speaker, we have also run the analysis. If you look at compensation allocations, Honorable Deputy Minister, do I have your attention? You will find that for the Office of Government Machinery, you have allocated 2.7 billion for compensation. By the way, when it was 327, you used to complain and do press conferences. Now it's 2.7 billion. But what is even more worrying, the economic sector ministries, 7 of them, the ones that are responsible for generating growth, expansion of the economy and jobs for people, you have given them a paltry 2.2 billion Ghana cedis. You value Office of Government Machinery compensation more than 7 economic ministries. You were telling us a few minutes ago that infrastructure is the most important thing. While you have made available 2.7 billion cedis for compensation at the Office of Government Machinery, Honorable Deputy Minister, if you check your budget, the numbers, do you know how much you have given for compensation for the infrastructure sector ministries? A paltry 700 million Ghana cedis. So your budget is showing your priorities. But even more importantly, I keep reminding you that the most important things that the people of Ghana are looking for, improvement in cost of living. Between the State of the Nation address and your economic policy and your budget, you have conveniently forgotten about them. You told us that you were going to use the special petroleum levy to cushion people who buy fuel from increased fuel prices. Between SONA, budget, and economic policy, you have conveniently forgotten about it. Today, you have increased the cost of gas, which is used for producing electricity, from $7 per MMBTU to $8 per MMBTU. You know what it means. What it means is that the cost of power produced is going up. Then to add insult to injury, you have added to it that every 3 months there will be adjustments in utility tariffs. So what is going to happen is that utility tariffs are going to go up every 3 months. Is this the reset that you promised the people of Ghana? You told everybody that food inflation was so high it needs to be dealt with. My uncle is here. He has rolled out an interesting program which looks very much like planting for food and jobs. You are going to give support to farmers to increase production. I'm giving you honest feedback. The outstanding items like porous borders, transportation challenges, liberalized pricing regime at our markets, the program that you are talking about doesn't address it. So food inflation, you have not done anything about it. Transportation. Today, the Minister for Transport is now asking transport unions that they should hold on with transport fare increases. Because you haven't, as a government, introduced any policy to deal with it, despite what you told the people of Ghana. And so, my brother, the economic policy you have brought, it doesn't respond to the key issues. Worse is that you have introduced new taxes that will worsen the cost of living. The growth and sustainability levy that you have introduced from 2026, 2027, 2028 is going to affect banks, non-banking financial institutions, insurance companies, telecom companies, breweries, oil marketing companies, companies and institutions registered under SEC, electronic money issuers, and all other companies that are not within category A and B. I can give you a copy of Act 1095 by 5%. All these industries, they are going to pass the cost on to the average Ghanaian, and cost of living will go up. So the most important thing to the people of Ghana, cost of living, you have not tackled it. My final point, Mr. Speaker, and I'll take my seat. You see, when you gave all of these policies to the Ghana Statistical Service and the Finance Ministry people, they marked it. And they said that they project that it will lead to 4.4% growth in the economy. The economy that you said was criminally managed. The economy that you said was a crime scene. It did a modest 5.7. Remember that in the first 3 years before COVID, we were doing 7%. When the recovery happened, 5.7. All your programs put together, they are now telling you that it will do 4.4. Mr. Speaker, by our model, on top of the 5.7% this year, Ghana should be doing nothing less than 8% growth. This year, by our model. So, if you want to compare apples to apples, Honorable Deputy Minister, comparing apples to apples, your 4.4% compares to 8%. I have in my hands here the Deloitte economic forecast for 2025. It was issued in December. They said in December that when they look at the MPP's economic recovery program, inflation, following our disinflation trend, is supposed to be 11% this year. 11% this year. You promised a reset that you are going to do better than us. What is your figure? The same 11%. How? You should be doing 7%. Yes. Don't forget that in 2019, the MPP did 7.9% inflation. This is after 2 years of single-digit inflation. And so respectfully, I beg of you, if you listen to the feedback, your overall performance, as is being marked by the Finance Ministry and the Ghana Statistical Service, you need to up it a little more. Mr. Speaker, I will conclude by these comments. In fact, some more data we have. The Office of Government Machinery used to be the 7th highest expenditure item. Today, because you have inflated it, it is now the 5th highest. It is higher. It is higher. It is higher than local government. It's even higher than roads and highways. Mr. Speaker, to conclude, we call on our colleagues on the government bench, try and find coherence between your economic policy and your manifesto. Else, you may not hit 20% and you disappoint yourself. Number 2, go back into the budget and let your money follow where your words have been. The big things that will create growth and expansion of the economy, put money behind them. And Mr. Speaker, the very final point, it's not too late. You have some time. We have 3 weeks before appropriation. Just like how the Finance Minister came back to correct himself that he wants to amend the Income Tax Amendment Act to actually include betting tax, you can still come back and make corrections, and we in this mighty minority will support you to pass that budget. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity.
Honorable members, we now listen to Honorable Atta Issa. I don't know why, but the indication here is that you have 5 minutes. He's an ordinary parliamentarian.
Thank you very much, Right Honourable Speaker.
Member, please, you may proceed.
Thank you very much, Right Honourable Speaker. It is important to note that when it comes to lessons on managing the economy, the minority side or the MPP should be the last to offer such suggestions. Because the verdict on your 8-year mandate is what resulted into this number. The verdict onto the Ghanaian economy, how you performed, resulted into this number. I dare say the 2025 budget is the most well-received budget if you follow various stakeholders in our Ghanaian economy. This is because the preparation of the budget 2025 was preceded by 4 major activities. First of all, we did the National Economic Dialogue that this side that is criticizing the output of the various aspirations of our people, they didn't go and participate in the National Economic Dialogue. We also did the National Education Forum. We also did meeting traders by the Finance Ministry, and then the popular youth engagement on the expert platform. Mr. Speaker, it is important to also note, it is normally observed, if you look at previous or historical trends, that when a new government comes, having subjected us to economic hardships like this, where incidence of poverty is 23.4%, what it means is that 1 out of every 4 Ghanaian is very poor in Ghana as we speak. When you inherit an economy like this, what finance minister across the world would have done would be cost burden sharing or cost sharing. However, this budget seeks to shift away, putting the burden on the ordinary Ghanaian into that of production. And I think this is one of the innovative ideas. It is also important to note, Mr. Speaker, the NPP, when you talk about public debt accumulation, they go and hide behind dollar. They do it in dollar rated and say that the NDC government added this amount in dollars and they added this amount in dollars. It is important to know when you look at IS 37, in reporting standards, you use your functional and presentation currencies in reporting your debt stock and not the dollar or the foreign debt component. Mr. Speaker, in 2015-2016, an asset quality review was done by the Bank of Ghana and the IMF, where it projected that the total depositors amount that was at risk as a result of poor banking supervision, poor corporate governance.
Of course, and there's the budget statement, comments on the budget statement, and we have more coming your way. Of course, it's also live on all our social media handles, and you can join the conversation as it's happening now in Parliament. Now, before we go, Ghana is home to 32 forts and castles. One of them, Fort Fredericksburg, in the western region, holds a remarkable story. A local merchant, John Coney, attacked and captured the fort, an act of bravery still celebrated in the Caribbean today. As part of our Ghana Mount series, Kojo Jansen sit down with the Western Region Director of the Museum and Monuments Board, Chrissy Blankson, for an insightful history lesson.
Fredericksburg was a German fort built by the Bredenbergers. So in around 1680, the German, they used to call them the Bredenbergers. They formed a company and decided to compete in Africa, particularly against Dutch and English. In 1630, they sent an emissary to the king of, they call it Pekusu, who was the king of the area, to seek property for this. And they signed an agreement with the local people. And in agreement, it was agreed that now nobody from the village should be sold as a slave. So that is how come they got the permission to build this fort here. When they were here, trade was very good. They recruited a local merchant, they call him John Coney, to be their ambassador or their factor, as they call it. So he established links with Asen, Wasa, Ashanti to direct traders to this fort. So it was very, very lucrative, of course, and sometimes even lower than other forts. So they saw a lot of ships here in trading, even against Elmina and Cape Coast, just as compared to them. And so when they tried to sell the fort to the Dutch, the Bredenbergers did not inform John Coney, which infuriated him greatly. So he staged a coup and attacked the fort and captured it.
Wow.
Yes.
So locals, Ghanaians.
Yeah, John Coney captured this fort, Fredericksburg Fort, and traded with, just like Asamani in Christiansburg, traded with the Europeans here at cutthroat price, even reducing some of them as low as 20% lower than what they had in Cape Coast and Elmina. So it attracted a lot of merchants. Then the Dutch realized, no, this guy is disturbing us. So they sent an army, a group, to come and take up the fort. The captain Van Hoven was the leader, and for 3 days they bombarded this fort from the ocean, and about 120 men landed on the coast to take over. That was when John Connon also opened fire, bang, 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 killed most of them, It said that about 35 only survived out of the 120 people, men that landed here, and managed to swim back to their boats and then eventually left. And that victory of John Coney just reverberated throughout the Caribbean, especially among the Dutch colonies. And so it is celebrated every year. Yes, in what has become as the John Canoe Festival. You know, it's an international festival. You can Google it and look for it.
John Coney Festival.
John Coney. Now they call it John Canoe, C-A-N-O, like canoe.
Oh,
John
right.
Canoe. That's, John Coney can also come up with it. So John Coney's Festival. It is celebrated in the Caribbean. And so when the Sierra Leone was established and free slaves were brought in here, they also brought the festival. And you know the drum they call djembe? Djembe, that is the drum that was used in the celebration. So they came up with it and also started the celebration in Sierra Leone. Are you familiar with the image of a Rasta man playing djembe and then some people dancing? It's a common image. They use it, they've made cloth out of it, curtains, calendars out of it. It's like a Rasta man playing djembe, and then you can see somebody like this, you know, it's like more. That is the festival. That's the
But
djembe
my question
festival.
is, why are the exploits of John Coney celebrated in other parts of the world but not here in Ghana?
Well, because probably we have not established that fact. We have not let people know. In fact, when we went to the chief, he said some Jamaicans were coming here early this month, remember? I'm sure this was linked to that because they see him as a hero. They see him as their hero, you know, the German,
So they must be shocked when they get here.
Yes.
And this place is
so
quiet.
dry and like this, you know, they'll be very shocked. So the Dutch eventually managed to oust John Coney out. But before that, John Coney just removed all the valuables of the facility and established a mansion for himself. So he moved, there's a beautiful gate, he moved it, all the fixtures and all important things, he just removed all of them to establish himself out there. So when the Dutch eventually took over, it was bare and it didn't gain its former glory again.
Right, so that's it. I mean, quite an educative piece there with Kwadwo Yansem. And of course, there's more stories on myjournalline.com, compelling stories for you this afternoon. That's our show for today. It's been exciting having you on the pulse. Same time tomorrow, together with my production team, we'll be here to bring you another exciting edition. Whatever you are up to in the hours ahead, I hope it's profitable. My name is Elton Bobby. Have a good evening and take care.